Hey guys, welcome to our second podcast. This is on what does social justice means because this is a social justice podcast and a lot of people might not know what it is. So we're going to kind of hear from different students as part of SJAC, which is again Social Justice Advocacy Council, a couple officers in it to see what social justice means to them and maybe some stories about it. My name is Pranav. I was on the first introduction podcast. I'm going to have the other two introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Kristie. My pronouns are she, hers, and I am one of the volunteer coordinators on the programming board this year, along with Kimmy.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kimmy. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am also one of the volunteer coordinators on the programming board this year.
Yeah, so I'm part of the affiliate board, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, which basically SJAC is, they're split into two different departments. One's affiliate board, which is really helping out RSOs and student organizations on UAB's campus, and programming board, which is a lot of events to help educate the general public. So before I get into our podcast, how are you guys doing, y'all?
I'm doing okay. I'm getting ready to transition back into campus. I move in tomorrow, and I'm a little bit nervous, but also a little bit excited to see what this year holds. And I'm kind of glad in a way that we get to have this new virtual way of learning and interacting with people, just because I think it's going to be a good skill to have in the future, just to be able to interact with people virtually and still be able to network and make those connections.
Yeah, I'm doing well too. I just moved into my apartment on Tuesday, so it's been kind of an adjustment, getting everything ready and stuff like that. And yeah, I think I agree with Kristie. It's definitely not ideal. I guess this whole situation of doing things virtual, being forced to social distance and do all of the things that comply with the health guidelines, it's not fun and it's definitely not ideal. But I think that this raises some interesting questions and some new challenges, I guess, to the typical way that we function as people. And I think it's a good time, it's as good a time as any to really kind of reflect on our own roles in our community, how we play a part in maintaining that community and our influence on our community members.
Yeah, well, I'll be honest with you guys. I was kind of smiling when you guys were talking just because you guys have a much more positive outlook than me. My outlook's this has been terrible. I love to talk to people, so I've literally been no joke. I have this teddy bear at home, and I just started staring at it and started talking to it and imagining voices. To where at a part, I was like, dude, you're going through some stuff. But it's honestly been kind of rough, at least for me, just not being able to see people. And for people who don't know, I'm actually going to be staying home for the fall because of my parents worrying about COVID, quite frankly. So, and I got to change my last class to online. So it's been kind of rough, but I do agree with what Kimmy said, especially with the whole self-reflecting thing. I think you get to really kind of look at your past years, at least for me, and you get to kind of see how it went and kind of reminiscent over it, but also learn from it. It's also been rough, especially for different reasons because of social turmoil, seeing a lot of things on news, the Chinese started coronavirus, the Black Lives Matter movement. I think at least for us, especially being a part of SJAC, and what SJAC really does is try to really advocate for social justice, different issues, and to educate as well, and to help empower students to really make a difference in their futures. And I think that just being home, seeing all these things on news and learning from my fellow peers like you guys and the news itself and social media, it's been pretty hard. And that really got me thinking, what does social justice mean to you? What does it mean to you guys?
Yeah, well, I really like that you brought up how we're living in this time where there's a lot of social issues being brought up, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement. I think one of the biggest things that I've taken away from this is how pivotal that social media can be in movements such as this. And I think it's awesome that we're students in this time because we look back throughout history, all of the major social events and social changes have happened because of students primarily. And I think it's really cool that we have this unique position. But in terms of what I think social justice is, I really think that it's important to talk about how social justice is meant to uplift marginalized voices specifically. I think that most of the social justice work I've done in particularly has been to encourage and provide tools to other people in order to make sure that their voices are heard and that their experiences are validated. Because when we talk about social change and creating justice for everyone, we have to make sure that we are like giving marginalized voices the space to talk about their experiences, because it's very easy for us as advocates to try to chime in a little bit. And I think that sometimes that kind of deters the movement a little bit. But I think what makes a great ally and a great advocate is to uplift individual voices.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Kristie. I think like it's difficult sometimes because as advocate, sometimes like you end up getting a little ahead of yourself and like assuming like, you know, especially if you're speaking for a community that you're not really a part of. Sometimes you can get into kind of like assuming that you know what the issues are, like, you know, like what they want and how they want to resolve it. So I think it's always good to have that like kind of self-awareness and making sure you are uplifting their voices and not speaking for them. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, Pranav, like I'm definitely like I do have this sort of like positive outlook, but I really like it's been really hard. Like it's been like what, half a year now since like everything kind of started, and it's been definitely a very difficult time for a lot of people, for a lot of people in our communities. And I think like sometimes as social justice advocates, it can be really hard when you're like, let's say you're on the internet and you see people posting things that like show that they like really don't care kind of about like the consequences of some of their actions, and you see people posting these things that like blatantly like contradict your own views on what equality means and stuff, and it can get really disheartening. And sometimes like I really want to just like throw my phone away and like not even look at that, because like it's hard to admit and realize that there are some people in this world that like have such different viewpoints than you, especially when the viewpoints that you have are so deeply rooted in like your own beliefs and equality and fairness and like what you believe that means. So it's definitely been very disheartening, but I think at the end of the day, like it's only a time, it's only like a new challenge. And I guess that challenge has always been here, but I think right now it's amplified because of the times that we're in, because we're all quarantined and we're all on social media more. I think that all these issues are being brought to light more and being talked about more, which I think is a good thing. So there are always pros and cons, I guess. Yeah. But I think like as far as what social justice means to me, I don't really like, I don't have like a super concrete answer, I guess, because I feel like it's so complex because there's so many different angles and ways to approach social justice and promoting social justice. So I think like my personal experiences have focused a little more on removing the barriers that people often face, like to access specific resources. So whether that's like focusing on like removing healthcare access barriers or removing like financial barriers for people to access like educational resources. I think that that's kind of been my own lens of what social justice encompasses, but I think like everyone definitely has their own unique story of how they've contributed and stuff.
So I'm gonna, I guess, push it back to Kristie now. So kind of like with Kimmy's story, I guess, like how would you, was there like is there like a specific story maybe that you remember, or I kind of, I guess like I guess a specific like social justice cause that really made you passionate about this and made you want to join even SJAC?
Yeah, well, I think I got my introduction to social justice towards the end of my senior year of high school. There was, I mean, all schools have like an incident, I guess. And during my senior year, there was an incident in which a couple students were filmed saying some derogatory things, and of course the administration got some backlash in our community. It had the community talking, and obviously the administration really didn't know what to do about it, so they turned to students for what they thought should be done about the situation. And even though not much came of it, I think that me being able to voice my concerns to administration and have my voice be heard, and realizing that my voice can be a tool and it can help not only myself but others, I think that was when I realized that I wanted to do social justice work, and that for me, going to school and learning and education was not just about my personal gain, but how I can contribute in the grand scheme of things. So I really wanted to get a head start in like collegiate advocacy and social justice, which is why I ended up ultimately joining Social Justice Advocacy Council this year for the first time. But my freshman year, one of the biggest organizations that I was involved in was, kind of the education aspect of it, because I'm a firm believer that education is one of the most pivotal tools for social justice. So I worked with this organization which taught social and emotional skills to students in the K-12 Fairfield city schools. And I think that was one of the most important experiences that I've had thus far in my collegiate advocacy journey, because I think giving students at an early age the ability to not only share their own experiences with others, but, understand and come to terms and vocalize what it is that they're feeling, and so that can ultimately help them in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree with like almost everything you said. I think for me it was a little different though, because I honestly was like, I kind of had this idea of social justice. I didn't even know what it was like. I didn't know that there was a term like social justice. In fact, when I was younger, I kind of just thought that like the place I grew up in like middle school, elementary school, even after moving from India, which I did move from India, it was kind of cool for me because like when I was in India, like everyone was like me, like there wasn't much diversity. And so I think living in California at first, people were just a lot different from me. And I think I really became interested in learning about other people's stories and other people's cultures and other people's backgrounds, and seeing how those stories are just so different based on where they came from, and realizing that there's inherent differences in people and that leads to differences in stories. But even those differences in stories, if you hear every single person's story, there's some similarities that can be found in each person despite their background differences. And I think that really made me interested in why do these differences even occur, and how do like social like institutions affect that, because those really kind of ingrain those differences in us. So I think I became kind of interested in the differences of stories and how, higher social justice measures are kind of affected by them. Like, education, for example, the court system, healthcare inequalities, so many different things. And I don't know, I just become fascinated by hearing different people speak about their backgrounds and their interests, and it's really great. Another thing that really resonated with me personally, Kristie, was how you talked about kind of education and how like it's really important to help people like know about this so you can advocate for others. I think the tool of advocation is just really important because one, it makes us more united as a society, and it also just like it kind of shows what amazing things humans can do when we come together. So I think it's just really important to advocate. With that being said, I kind of want to pass it over to Kimmy to see, do you have any like specific memories or any specific instances that kind of led you to social justice in SJAC?
Yeah, so like to be honest, I kind of like had this similar background as you, Pranav. Like growing up, I had sort of a vague idea of like social justice, like equality, like yes, people all deserve, the same things. Like they all deserve to be happy, the basic things. But I never really kind of understood what that meant, I guess, in terms of how to actually turn that into a reality, because it always kind of seemed like more of an ideal to me that we would always be trying to get to but never really reach. But I think coming to college, I was able to see so much more. And I was really able to meet so many people who like had those same, you know, desires as me. Like people like you too, who are like really like, they just want to promote social justice. They want like everyone to be able to be heard. They want everyone to be able to like access the same things. And so I think doing a lot of that has helped. But I guess the experience that really pushed me into joining this council, I think, yeah, I'm not, because I'm going to be a junior this year, right? But I didn't get involved until like the middle of last year, my sophomore year, because to be honest, like I saw the social justice mixer flyers in my dorm freshman year, but I was kind of like, I was scared to go because I was like, I don't know if like I'm one of those social justice people. Like I'm not like woke, you know, like I was like, I care definitely, but like I don't know if I can lead that. I don't know if I can contribute anything to that. And so I never ended up going because I just thought that I could just like go and support them and like go to their events. But like I thought that I wasn't really educated or qualified enough to be a part of something that big. But I think I started volunteering at the Cahaba Valley Healthcare Clinic. So that is actually a dental care clinic that provides free dental care to residents in Jefferson and Shelby counties. So through volunteering here, I did like most of the things that I did were, you know, paperwork, like I was at the front desk answering phone calls. But I think through that, I got to see kind of what this community was like. And like, even though I knew like, yes, they're like a good community, like they're like real people, they're nice people, like really, I think until you work with these communities directly, you can't really understand kind of like what their lives are like. And you don't really, it's much harder to kind of remember like they're not just statistics like, oh yes, this X number of people live in poverty each year. Like it's so eye-opening, I guess, to really work with these communities and like see like these are real people, they're so sweet. And I think like this volunteering changed me a lot because I ended up volunteering there for a year, and it really just impacted me because I think those people were about the nicest people that I ever met in my life. Like they were just so sweet, even though so many of them would be in really bad pain because a lot of them had dental issues that like hadn't been treated for a while because they didn't have the money to pay for those fees. And so some of them had like really severe pain in their jaw, and they were also had other like health issues. But they were just so sweet to you, and they would never complain about their problems. What they would do is they would see you like a young student working at the desk, and they'd be like, wow, like what are you studying, like what do you want to do and stuff, and just ask you about your life. And they would like, the only thing they would say to you is just encourage you to like keep doing well, like you're doing great, like keep going to school, like do big things, you know. And it was just so nice and so heartwarming to see like these people who were, oh my gosh, it was so heartwarming to see these people who were just so, they just cared so much about you, even though they really didn't know you, and they just saw like such a bright thing in you, even though they were going through so much more. So I think like seeing people in communities like that really just inspire you to like do better, to like eliminate those problems and make sure that they can have those lives that they're encouraging you to have, I guess. Sorry, that was kind of a long story.
Yeah, I think Kimmy, you bring up a really great point. I kind of want to piggyback off of that a little bit. I think that a lot of times our society values how profitable you are. So like your worth as an individual is tied to how much money you make and how, like dollar signs basically. And in turn, the idea and the concept of socioeconomic status makes us kind of other people. So, a lot of times people don't see other people as human, you know what I mean? And I think that that's one of the biggest things that I think about a lot. And one of the reasons why I'm really passionate about certain issues pertaining to economic justice. But I think that everyone's role in society is valuable. And I think that until we realize that as a society and we want to strive for, um, equitable treatment for everyone, I think then we can say that social justice is always going to be relevant and it's always going to be necessary, and that we're always going to have to keep learning and keep listening to other people's voices. And the concept of social justice should always be a thing that's taught and recognized.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Kristie. I really like how you talked about the wealth aspect of it because, if you like literally Google the definition of social justice, the actual definition per se of social justice is, again, I think it's dependent on people's stories. I think there's a common theme of equality, but I, I think like according to Google, this is literally the definition. Social justice is a concept of fair and just relations between the individual and society as measured by the distribution of wealth, opportunities for personal activity, and social privileges. That's literally the definition, which I think is like, even in like, this is on Wikipedia, by the way, even like just like reading that, it's like so vague to me. Like, I think that it's like, so there's like no emotion ingrained in like reading that definition, which is like, I think that's kind of how we view as society as social justice. There's like a lack of emotion and understanding that people are a lot different from us. I know, like, for me, kind of like with your story, like Kimmy, I remember when I was like actually volunteering at the hospital, it was so crazy how people have like, you can just tell based off like their outfit and their families of higher income levels were so much more rude and like not understanding of where you came from. Whereas if you go to someone who's obviously from a much lower income and like a much more, I guess, like troubled background in a sense, they had more hurdles to like overcome. It's so crazy how much nicer they are to you. Like I remember one family, the like I say the better off socioeconomically was like, I walked in offering their family like coffee when I was volunteering because I was pretty much giving coffee to like visitors, and they were literally like, "Yeah, can I get this, please?" And I like gave it to them. They're like, "You need to add more sugar." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll give you the sugar. Calm down." Whereas this other like family, this African American man, I actually remember this like very like vividly. He's like 69 years old. I literally go in, I give his daughter a coffee, and then like I remember he's like, you seem like a nice young man. Do you want to see my X-ray? It was like super random too, and he started like telling me about how he broke his leg and how he kind of talked to me about how he had to like overcome the healthcare hurdles because he's not like, their family's not super prosperous, you can say. So they had a lot of difficulties with that, and he talked about his background. Literally had like a 15-minute conversation, and I got in trouble after because I wasn't supposed to spend that long in a room. So that was kind of funny, but like it was totally worth it. Like I will take that L again. It's just the amount of things you learn from other people is just, I think that's what really attributes social justice in such broad ways. I know that's something that actually got me interested personally in healthcare, social justice, like inequalities within healthcare system and how you can kind of help with that. So that kind of actually led me to think like, what like causes specifically, I know there's like a lot, but like on the top of your head, if you can think of like one cause that you're really passionate about, what would you say that would be, and how can people in general or yourself better advocate for that?
Yeah, I guess mine would be similar to yours, like really promoting healthcare equity and stuff, because I think that too many people really have like a lot of barriers between them and like the care that they deserve. Because like when you're talking about healthcare, you're not just talking about like getting prescriptions, getting like, different treatments. You're also talking about like the quality of care that comes from a good doctor, like someone who is genuinely interested in your well-being, and your happiness and stuff like that, and who will actively work with you to promote that. And so I think that everyone deserves that element of care in their lives. And so I think that's why, like, ultimately I do have the goal of becoming a doctor who can help to contribute to that, and hopefully help to serve like some of these people that I've been talking about. Because yeah, I think you're right, Pranav. Like I think it's really, there's something to be said about people who have all the reasons in the world, like all the right in the world to be so mad. Like they have the right to like be upset at the system. They have the right to like be like, they kind of have the right to like be like rude and like take their anger out, And like they have all those reasons, but they don't. They choose to be so sweet. They choose to be so like humble. And so I think that like really trying to get that level of care to different individuals who really haven't been able to access it, especially for a lot of their lives, I think that's like my passion.
Yeah, so for me, naturally, I think a lot about my personal identity and the different groups that I belong to. Um, Obviously, I'm a Black woman, so issues pertaining to my identities are something that I think about a lot. But recently, as I've entered college and through the SMDP student leader retreat specifically, I've had to force myself to think about my privileges and the things that I don't have to think about. And I think that is what has made me those are the issues that I'm really the most passionate about, because I mean, obviously the three of us are sitting here, we're all three UAB students. We have the ability to go to school, go to higher education, and we have the access to quality education. I think a lot about how differently my life would be had I have had different parents, and I think that I just have been thinking a lot about issues pertaining to economic justice and things of that sort that are really very much out of our control, and how unfair it is for people to be discriminated against and to not have the tools that they need in order to be successful. Like we're sitting in here and on Zoom calls talking to each other now, and these opportunities aren't provided to everyone. And so I think that that's really what I'm most passionate about right now.
So I heard most of that, but some got cut off. But off what I did hear, I definitely do like agree with you on the education aspect. I think it's like really crazy that like when I think about it, like, oh, like I'm just going to college and that's like very normal for me. That's like not very normal for like half of the people on the earth, and that's really insane to think about. And I know something that like I remember like I got this in an interview question actually before, where was like, what do you like to wake up to? And people thought I'd give you a super cliche answer, a fake answer, but like this is honestly it. It's like for me, I think it's the ability to think on my own and to learn something each day and to just make world of how much knowledge I don't know. And I think that like a person, what differs us from a biological point of view, like from like other species and stuff, is our fact that we have such high intellectual vitality to where we can think and we can organize our thoughts into what our experiences tell us. And I think that college and like higher education and quality to like good education really does that. And the fact that so many people don't have that baffles me. I remember that I was specifically in India, and this is actually what connects me really to healthcare and the quality of education. I was just bored one day, honestly, because my family all went out to like tour. They really went out to like, clubs and stuff, so I was not allowed, obviously. So I ended up like visiting my uncle who like lived just a few streets down, and he's an ophthalmologist. And what shocked me was how he got like several different types of patients that day. And I remember like all of them were like decently educated. And then this one woman came in, and he's like, you said you couldn't see stuff, so let me give you the eye test, right? And then there's like English alphabets in there, like A, B, C, and he asked, can you read these? And she's like, I cannot read them. And for some reason, he just like knew just off like his interactions. He's like, and then he put up like numbers, and she's like, I still can't read it. Then she put up like our language, like Telugu, which is the language I speak, those alphabets, and she's like, oh yeah, I can read them. So it's kind of crazy how much like that education would have affected like her, I guess, like how her health was, which is like kind of like weird to think about. And while I'm fortunate enough to think about social justice issues, which is I think a high level of like topic, really, she didn't even like know the English alphabet, which is like, it's kind of crazy how much like poverty and like imbalance of education exists. So I think that's kind of cool. Like, what do you guys think about education and social justice?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like I think education and social justice kind of, I don't know, they really like go hand in hand. Like education can influence like the amount, because I don't know how to say this. I guess education influences social justice, and then social justice in turn influences education, and then they just have very intertwined relationships, I guess. And so I think that you're right, and like going to college, like for us, has been like a really great experience because of all the things we've learned. But I think like at the end of the day, that's why it's good that we're taking these privileges that we do have. Like it's definitely great that we've been able to recognize our privileges, but we can take the privileges that we do have and use them to serve those who don't, and try to make sure that they do have those privileges in the future. So I think like I've definitely learned a lot about myself and my own privileges, being in SJAC and like being even in college, being a philosophy major and stuff, like has you thinking about a lot of that stuff sometimes. So I think education is probably one of the biggest factors that can help in promoting social justice. And I think it starts from a young age, but at any age you can really impact someone by giving them educational resources and things like that.
Yeah, I think also it's worth mentioning that education as a tool, oftentimes, I know from my experience growing up, going to Alabama public high school or school systems, school never really taught me that I got the perspective that in order to be where you want, you have to work hard. That's kind of the mentality that we got growing up. And to a certain extent, that's the case. But we don't really learn much about how certain people are privileged and why social justice is so important. And that I know, for example, whenever we would go to history class, we learn history so that it doesn't repeat itself. But I think that one of the things that's really important and that a lot of people miss out on is that we also have to make sure that we are making the world better, not just letting it repeat itself, but making sure that we demand justice and we're making the world not only equal but equitable, because we would be kind of oblivious to ignore the fact that certain people do have certain advantages, and in that we have to cater towards the disadvantages that they've had. I think that when we look at issues such as those that are happening in the Black community, for example, I think that a lot of people have the mentality that that you kind of have to pull yourself up on your own. Like the American dream is that you do all the work and then you get all the credit, and that's exactly how things line up. But what about people who aren't given the access to the tools that they need to be successful, And also there's the idea that not everyone's role in society is like valid and that it's necessary, when in fact it is. I think that higher education specifically, it's something that is considered to be a necessity, really, and that you really kind of need higher education to get like a great job, and that if you're not college educated, that your job isn't the best. There's that stigma around education, and I think that if we're going to use education as a tool, that we need to make sure as a society that we have it available to everyone, and that it's quality, and that we're making sure to mind the gap and keep everyone, create an equitable society is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So I really like how you actually talked about the hard work concept, because, as a little kid, I always learned that too. But I actually think, like, with our topic, what social justice is, that's actually another cool way of looking at it. Like, yeah, everyone has to work hard, but some people have to work harder because of hurdles that they have to overcome, which I think is what social justice tries to understand and tries to, I guess, maybe not even like fix, but educate people on, and hopes to one day kind of alleviate that. There's different people have to unfortunately go through more hurdles and work harder than other people, which I think is another reason why social justice is very cool, and it's a cool way to like think about it. I don't want to take this podcast too long, guys, so I kind of want to like quickly wrap it up. Do you guys have any like last things you guys want to add in? I'll pass it to Kimmy first.
Oh, well, I don't really think I have anything to add, but I guess just like to conclude, like social justice really, like I really like the theme of this episode because I think social justice means something different to everyone, but that's where like the beauty of it is because it allows us to really see like, I guess like what exact, like all the different approaches that we need to have and the different perspectives that we need to consider to really solve like these complex social problems.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think that it's a good thing that social justice is such a broad term because we're not going to know what social justice is going to look like 10 years from now. And the social issues that we see today are not going to be the same. Social justice is ever changing. The issues are changing. They need modern solutions that we can't really offer up at the moment, but we might be able to offer them in 10 years, you know? So I'm kind of glad in a sense to be, I'm glad to be part of SJAC in this moment in time because, you know, I ultimately want to grow myself as an advocate and an organizer. And I think that SJAC does a great job of providing spaces for marginalized peoples to, you know, have a safe space. And I think one of the biggest takeaways I've had from being in quarantine is to like protect your mental health and to remain in spaces where you feel comfortable. And I think that's one of my favorite parts of being part of the programming board is that we can create events where we can make people feel comfortable. And we have the affiliate board that has identity-based RSOs where people can feel comfortable being themselves.
Yeah, I totally agree with what both of you guys said. I think, you know, social justice is like, it's super cool. And around this time, it's really cool to like learn about and just learn different people's stories and different people in general and their background and where they came from. So I think it's like super impactful if you might not even like be super like interested in the topic, but which I think, by the way, everyone should at least try to be interested in, because one, I think it's cool, but I think the best thing like anyone can do, myself included, like Kimmy, Kristie, anyone in general, can be just like, hey, like look out, understand other people's stories, like read about this stuff and have a broad mind and just be willing to like learn and educate yourself. I think just by doing that, especially as college students, like there's so much you can do. And as Kristie was saying, with the affiliate board in specific, and even the programming board creates a great space for you to learn from a lot of different people. Same thing with the RSOs and different organizations. There's a safe space for you to be involved, but also to learn a lot of different things. So I think that's a great way for you to learn. So with that being said, guys, I'd love to have, I genuinely mean this, like not just for the podcast, but I really liked having this conversation with you guys because I got to learn more about you guys and just what social justice means to different people. So I want to thank you guys, and this is going to wrap the end of our second episode, What is Social Justice? Hope you guys enjoyed our second episode. Thanks, guys.